The sound of porcelain shattering against the marble floor echoed through the silent house like a gunshot. I froze, my hand hovering over the open drawer of the antique vanity. My heart wasn't just beating, it was hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I looked down at the object in my hand. It wasn't a weapon, it was a receipt, a simple, crumpled piece of paper from a fertility clinic. The date was from yesterday. The patient's name listed was Genevieve Sterling, my name. But I hadn't been to a clinic in 3 years. Not since the doctor told Julian and me that it was hopeless. I looked into the mirror, my reflection pale and trembling, and then my eyes shifted to the woman standing in the doorway. She was wearing my silk robe, the emerald green one Julian had bought me for our 10th anniversary. Her hair was dyed the exact shade of chestnut as mine. She smelled like my signature perfume, Santal 33. "Genevieve," she purred, her voice dripping with a sickly sweet concern that made my skin crawl. "You're shaking. Did you forget your medication again? Julian is so worried about your episodes." She took a step closer, and the floorboards creaked under her weight. That's when I saw it. On her finger, catching the dim light of the hallway, was my grandmother's sapphire ring. The one I thought I had lost months ago, the one I had cried over for weeks while she comforted me. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was an erasure. She didn't just want my husband, she wanted to become me. And looking at her now, smiling that serpentine smile, I realized she was terrifyingly close to succeeding. To understand how I ended up standing in my own bedroom, terrified of my best friend, you have to understand who Vanessa was to me, or who I thought she was. We weren't just friends, we were soulmates, or so I believed. We met in architecture school 20 years ago. I was the studious, anxious girl from a strict family. Vanessa was the wild, charismatic force of nature who pulled me out of my shell. She was the maid of honor at my wedding to Julian. She was the godmother to the children I never managed to have. Fast forward to 6 months ago, my life was, by all accounts, perfect. Julian and I ran a successful high-end architectural firm. We lived the Hawthorns, a sprawling Victorian estate we had restored together. It was my sanctuary. High ceilings, oak paneling, the smell of beeswax and old paper. It was safety. Then came the phone call. It was 2 a.m. Outside, a storm was battering the windows, the rain lashing against the glass like angry fingers. "Jen," her voice was broken, a jagged whisper. "He threw me out. He took everything. The accounts, the car. I'm at a gas station on the I-95. I have nowhere to go." Vanessa's third marriage had imploded. I shook Julian awake. "Get the car," I said. "We have to get Vanessa." When we picked her up, she looked like a drowned rat, mascara running down her cheeks, shivering in a thin coat, holding a single duffel bag. My heart broke for her. I wrapped her in my cashmere blanket, the smell of wet wool and cheap cigarettes filling the car. "You are staying with us," I declared, gripping her ice-cold hand, "as long as you need." Julian looked at me in the rearview mirror. His eyes were tired, but he nodded. Of course, the guest wing is empty. If only I had seen the way she looked at the leather interior of our car. If only I had noticed that her tears stopped the moment we pulled into the driveway of the Hawthorns. It wasn't gratitude in her eyes as she looked up at the manor, it was hunger. The first month, the chameleon. The first few weeks were peaceful. Vanessa was the perfect houseguest. She cooked, she cleaned, she made herself invisible. I felt guilty for being so happy while she was so miserable, so I tried to lift her spirits. "Take whatever you need," I told her one morning, gesturing to my walk-in closet. "You need clothes for job interviews." She ran her fingers over my designer suits, the silk blouses, the structured blazers. "You have such good taste, Jen," she whispered. "I've always wanted to be elegant, like you." "You are elegant," I laughed, handing her a navy Dior dress. 2 days later, I came home early from a site visit. The house was quiet, smelling faintly of lavender polish. I walked into the kitchen and froze. Vanessa was standing by the stove, stirring a pot of risotto. She was wearing the navy dress I had lent her, but she had also cut her hair. Her long blonde waves were gone. In their place was a sharp chestnut bob, exactly like mine. She turned around, smiling. "Surprise! I thought a change would be good for a fresh start. Do you like it?" I felt a weird prickle at the back of my neck. It's very similar to mine, Vanessa." "Well, they say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery," she giggled, tapping the wooden spoon against the pot. "Julian said it brings out my eyes." "Julian said." The phrase hung in the air. "When did Julian see it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Oh, he popped in for lunch. He forgot his blueprints." She turned back to the stove. "He's so stressed, Jen. You really should take better care of him." A micro conflict sparked in my chest. I should take better care of him? I was running the business while he focused on the creative side. I was the one keeping the roof over our heads. But I swallowed the comment. She was fragile. She didn't mean it. The second month, the gaslighting begins. Things started to go missing. Small things at first. My favorite lipstick, the keys to the wine cellar, a signed contract for $1 million renovation project. "I put it right here on the console," I shouted one evening, frantically tossing papers around. "I know I did." Julian sat on the sofa, swirling his scotch. He looked annoyed. "Jen, you're overworked, you're becoming scatterbrained. Vanessa found your keys in the refrigerator yesterday." "I did not put my keys in the fridge," I snapped. Vanessa walked in, carrying a tray of appetizers. She moved with a grace that was new, a practiced sway of the hips. "It's okay, Jen," she said soothingly, placing a hand on Julian's shoulder, a little too firmly. "Stress does crazy things to the memory. Maybe you should lie down? I can help Julian with the invoices." "I don't need to lie down," I hissed. "Honey," Julian said, his voice dropping to that patronizing tone I was beginning to hate. "Don't snap at her. She's just trying to help. Honestly, you've been so erratic lately." I stormed upstairs, my blood boiling. I locked myself in the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at my reflection. Was I losing it? Was I stressed? I reached for my face cream, an expensive, custom-mixed formula I used every night. I unscrewed the lid and dipped my finger in. It burned. I gasped and washed it off immediately. The skin on my cheek turned angry red. I smelled the jar. Beneath the scent of roses, there was something chemical, like hair removal cream or bleach. My hands shook. I had used this cream yesterday and it was fine. I marched downstairs, the jar in my hand. Who touched this? Julian and Vanessa were sitting on the couch, closer than necessary. They pulled apart when I entered. "What now, Genevieve?" Julian sighed. "Someone put something in my face cream. It burns." Vanessa gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God, Jen! Are you sure you didn't just develop an allergy? You know, hormonal changes in your late 40s can trigger sensitivities." She emphasized late 40s with a subtle, cruel precision. Vanessa was 2 years younger than me, but in that moment, she looked a decade younger. "It smells like bleach, Vanessa." Julian stood up, his face hardening. "Stop it. Just stop it. You're being paranoid. Vanessa has been nothing but an angel. Why would she sabotage your face cream? Listen to yourself. You sound insane." He took the jar from me and sniffed it. "It smells like roses, Jen. You're imagining things." He handed it to Vanessa. "Does this smell like bleach to you?" She sniffed it delicately. No, it smells lovely. Maybe it's a phantom smell. My aunt had that before she had her stroke. The room spun. They were looking at me with pity, a united front of pity. I felt like a stranger in my own living room. The third month, the erasure. I started working longer hours just to avoid being home. The atmosphere at the Hawthorns had shifted. It was no longer my sanctuary. It was their stage. I came home one Tuesday night, exhausted. The house was dark, but candles were flickering in the dining room. I could hear music, jazz, the kind Julian loved. I crept toward the dining room. Through the crack in the door, I saw them. They were eating dinner. My china, my silver. Vanessa was wearing my black velvet gown, the one I wore to the gala last year. It was tight on her, but she wore it with a confidence that made me sick. She was laughing, throwing her head back, exposing her throat. Julian was leaning in, entranced. You really understand his vision, Julian. Genevieve is so practical. She worries about budgets and zoning laws. But you're an artist. You need a muse, not a manager. Julian smiled, a look of adoration I hadn't seen directed at me in years. You make me feel seen, Vanessa. Jen just makes me feel tired. I wanted to burst in. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to drag her out by her stolen hair. But something stopped me, a cold, hard knot of fear in my stomach. If I went in there now, I would look like the crazy wife, the erratic woman who hallucinates smells and loses keys. They would gaslight me into oblivion. Julian would leave me, and Vanessa would win. No, I needed proof. I needed to expose her for the parasite she was. I backed away silently. I went upstairs to the guest room, because lately Julian had been complaining that my tossing and turning was keeping him awake, so I had been sleeping apart. That night, I didn't sleep. I formulated a plan. The turn, the trap. The next day, I announced I had to go to a conference in Chicago for 3 days. Oh, that's a shame, Vanessa said, barely looking up from her coffee. She was reading Architectural Digest, marking pages with a red pen. My red pen. We were planning a little barbecue for the weekend. You two have fun, I said, forcing a smile. I need to secure the Miller account. Don't work too hard, Julian said, pecking me on the cheek. His lips felt cold. I packed my bag, but I didn't go to the airport. I drove 2 towns over and checked into a motel. Before I left the house, while they were out grocery shopping, which took 4 hours, I had installed 3 tiny hidden cameras, one in the living room, one in the kitchen, and one in the master bedroom. I sat in that dingy motel room, surrounded by the smell of stale smoke and desperation, and opened my laptop. The feed went live. For the first few hours, it was mundane. Vanessa rearranging the furniture, Vanessa criticizing my art collection to the housekeeper. Then, evening came. Julian came home. He walked through the door, and Vanessa was there to greet him, not with a wave, but with a kiss. A deep, lingering kiss that made bile rise in my throat. Is the witch gone? Julian asked, loosening his tie. She's gone, Vanessa laughed. God, the house feels so much lighter without her negative energy, doesn't it? It feels like ours, Julian said. They moved to the kitchen. I turned up the volume on my laptop, pressing the headphones so hard against my ears it hurt. Did you talk to the lawyer? Vanessa asked, pouring wine. My breath hitched. Lawyer? I did, Julian sighed. It's tricky, Van. The business is 50-50. The house is in her name because of that inheritance from her grandmother. If I divorce her now, I get half, maybe less if she fights. That's why we need the medical angle, Vanessa said calmly, chopping vegetables. If she's declared incompetent, if she has a breakdown, you get power of attorney. You get control. I froze. The world stopped turning. They weren't just having an affair. They were plotting to have me committed, to steal my life, my legacy, my sanity. The pills are working, Vanessa continued. She's foggy, irritable. Changing the labels on her antidepressants to the sedatives was a stroke of genius, Julian. I feel bad sometimes. Don't, she snapped. She doesn't appreciate you. She treats you like an employee. I treat you like a king. Imagine, Julian, once she's out of the picture, we can sell this mausoleum, move to Tuscany like you always wanted, with her money. I sat back in the motel chair, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness anymore, tears of pure, unadulterated rage. They had been drugging me. The brain fog, the exhaustion, it wasn't stress, it was poison. I recorded everything. I saved the clips to the cloud, to a USB drive, and emailed them to my personal attorney. But I wasn't done. I needed to confront them. I needed to see the fear in Vanessa's eyes when her house of cards collapsed. The climax, the return. I drove back to the Hawthorns in the middle of the night. The rain was pouring again, just like the night I brought the snake into my home. Poetic justice. I let myself in quietly. The house was dark. I could hear the storm raging outside, masking the sound of my footsteps on the stairs. I walked to the master bedroom. The door was ajar. I pushed it open. They were asleep, in my bed. Vanessa's head was resting on the pillow where I had cried myself to sleep for months. I didn't scream. I walked over to the vanity and turned on the bright overhead light. "Wake up," I said. My voice was calm, deadly quiet. Julian bolted upright, blinking in the sudden light. Vanessa groaned, shielding her eyes. "Jen, what are you doing here?" "Get out of my bed," I said. "Genevieve, calm down," Julian started, reaching for his glasses. "You're having an episode. You're not supposed to be back until Tuesday." I said, "Get out." Vanessa sat up, pulling the sheet up to cover herself. She looked at me, and for a second, I saw the panic. But she quickly masked it with that serpentine arrogance. "You're hysterical, Jen. Look at you. You're soaking wet. You're frightening us." "Am I?" I walked over to the vanity and picked up her purse. I dumped the contents onto the floor. Lipstick, credit cards, and there it was. The receipt, the one from the cold open, and the ring. "I know about the pills, Julian," I said, holding up the ring. "I know about the lawyer. I know about the plan to have me committed. I have it all on video. Cloud storage, sent to my lawyer, sent to your parents, Julian. Sent to the board of partners at the firm." The color drained from Julian's face so fast he looked like a corpse. "Jen, wait, you misunderstood." "And you," I turned to Vanessa, "you didn't go to a fertility clinic for yourself, did you? You went to impersonate me, trying to access my frozen embryos, or just trying to ruin my medical records?" Vanessa's face twisted. The mask fell. She didn't look beautiful anymore. She looked feral. "You didn't deserve any of this," she screamed, spit flying from her mouth. "You have everything. The money, the talent, the house, and what do I have? Nothing. I'm smarter than you, I'm prettier than you, but you always get the gold star. I just took what should have been mine." "Nothing was yours, Vanessa. You're a hollow shell. You try to fill yourself with other people's lives because you have none of your own." I tossed a folder onto the bed. "That is a restraining order and an eviction notice. You have 10 minutes to pack your things and leave. If you're not out, the police are waiting at the bottom of the driveway. I called them 5 minutes ago regarding the theft of this ring and the illegal administration of prescription drugs." "You wouldn't," Julian whispered. "Try me." The aftermath. Vanessa tried to grab her clothes, screaming obscenities. Julian tried to grab my arm, begging, crying, saying she bewitched him. I looked at my husband, the man I had loved for 15 years, and felt nothing. No love, no hate, just disgusted indifference. "You're an accessory to attempted poisoning, Julian," I said coldly. "Save your tears for the judge." When the police lights flashed through the window, painting the bedroom walls in red and blue, I finally felt the weight lift off my chest. I watched them being escorted out. Vanessa was kicking and screaming, looking like the mad woman she tried to paint me as. Julian walked with his head down, a broken man. 6 months later. I sit in the solarium of the Hawthorns. It's quiet. The divorce was messy, but the video evidence was irrefutable. Julian got nothing. He lost his license to practice architecture due to the ethics violation. Last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment working in sales. Vanessa? Vanessa is facing jail time for identity theft and reckless endangerment. It turns out I wasn't her first victim. She had done this to a roommate in college and a cousin in her 20s. She is a predator. I kept the house. I rebranded the firm. I changed the locks, the furniture, and the sheets. Sometimes when the house is too quiet, I can still smell her cheap perfume, a phantom scent of betrayal. But then I light a candle, sandalwood and cedar, and I reclaim my space. I learned a hard lesson that year. We are taught to be kind, to help those in need, to open our doors to old friends. But sometimes the person knocking on your door in the rain isn't looking for shelter. They are looking for a skin to wear. Trust your gut. If you feel like you're going crazy, if your reality is being denied, stop and look closer. The person holding your hand might be the one poisoning your tea. So I have to ask you, if your best friend showed up at your door tonight, claiming to have lost everything, would you let her in? And if you caught her wearing your life like a costume, would you have the strength to burn it all down to save yourself? Thank you for listening to my story. If this sent a shiver down your spine, please hit that like button. It helps more people hear this warning. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a confession. And tell me in the comments, what is the biggest red flag you've ever ignored in a friendship? I read every single comment. Stay safe and watch who you invite into your sanctuary.